Tom, why don't you go back to the board and let's take a deeper dive into Pennsylvania, where the votes are outstanding, what we can expect in the coming hours.
Right, because the casual election observer may look at this right here and say Donald Trump's lead is 116,000 votes, right? That seems like a big margin. The problem is we know there are still a lot of outstanding votes. And I'm going to check real quick because the numbers are changing as we're coming on the air. I think it's 560 was the last number we have. That's how many ballots they're still counting. And here's the problem for President Trump. Those ballots are from this area, Philadelphia and the suburbs around it, in Pittsburgh. These are the Democratic strongholds, George, in Pennsylvania. And if Joe Biden can run up the score there, he's going to catch up. That's why the Biden campaign feels they're in a good place. I want to show you one more data point, though, as we come out here, because we're talking about mail-in votes. We're talking about the early votes. This is the ratio right now. Look at this number, 80 to 20, and this is just 39% of the early vote. But the trend is way in Joe Biden's favor.
It is in Joe Biden's favor. Rick Klein, let me bring you in on that. This is something we were warning about before. David mentioned it at the top of the broadcast as well. But I think it was hard for everyone to wrap their minds around the magnitude of these numbers, the difference between the day vote and the mail-in vote.
Yeah, this is exactly the situation that election officials and a lot of outside observers said was very likely, that you would have a large number of votes that were banked by the Biden campaign before Election Day itself. And really, there's two main reasons that you're seeing an overwhelming Biden number out of the numbers that we're seeing come in now. One is they're mainly out of Democratic areas. They're coming out of urban areas, which traditionally report a little bit later. And then separately, this push toward mail-in voting. It was a major Democratic point. They were urging people to get mail-in votes, and paradoxically, it makes it harder to count. It takes longer, even though you're voting earlier. So this is exactly the situation that we expected, but you're right. Looking at the maps, looking at the math, it's kind of hard to conceptualize.
And just to underscore that, one of the reasons the Biden campaign is confident in Pennsylvania, we've seen their lead widen dramatically in Michigan.
That's exactly right. The same dynamics that you saw play out in Wisconsin, which initially looked pretty good for President Trump. Now it's a 20,000 vote victory, it would appear, for Joe Biden, and even more dramatically in Michigan. That's what they're expecting. They still see a lot of vote, hundreds of thousands of mail-in votes out of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and the immediate suburbs that they think are Biden votes, that they think these numbers are going to break dramatically in their direction.
Okay, David Muir, what else are you seeing in Pennsylvania?
A couple of things. First, independence, which we've been talking about a lot since last night. Let's take a look at Pennsylvania. Joe Biden, this is a 10-point improvement among independents, 51 to 43. The significant lead there for Joe Biden with independents. He also improved upon Hillary Clinton's support in Philadelphia in the suburbs. Biden's trailing Trump in northeast Pennsylvania, but he did improve on where Hillary Clinton was. He's chipped away at men. He took support from Trump among college-educated white men. He's improving among moderates, up 4 points from 2016. And I know the frustration for particularly President Trump's supporters right now in Pennsylvania with this anxiety being caused by this tightening of the race. We also have to remember that just as we were warning for weeks on the news that facing this pandemic, we would have this historic early vote likely and that it would take time to count, that lawmakers in Pennsylvania said you can't get an early start on voting, on counting that vote. They tried. There was a push for that. That's why everyone just has to continue to be patient as these votes.
Yeah, it was part of the Republican effort to suppress mail-in voting. They did not want to encourage mail-in voting at all. Martha Raddatz, you spent an awful lot of time in those suburbs of Philadelphia where we're still waiting for some vote right now.
I certainly did, George. And there was a lot of change that I saw from 2016 because I spent a lot of time there as well in Pennsylvania. And this time, I'm thinking this morning of a young couple. Both voted for Trump. Two young kids. They voted for Trump in 2016. And this time, neither one of them did. And I have to say, I think the wife, the woman, turned earlier than her husband, but he eventually did and had never, ever voted for a Democrat before. Both of them said again, and we say this over and over and over again, but it was character and chaos. They just do not like the way Trump operates. George, I also wanted to add a little something about Pennsylvania and the overseas vote. In 2016, there were 22,000 mail-in absentee votes from overseas, U.S. citizens overseas, including 7,788 military. Right now, those overseas ballots can be received in Pennsylvania up to November 10th. Also, sort of a similar story there in Georgia, but those overseas ballots have to be received by November 6th. And when you think about the military, I think we all think it's a bit more conservative, and certainly the votes in the past have been, but it is very diverse. It is a big reflection of where the country is as well.
It certainly is. Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.